На сцену приглашаются
We invite
уполномоченные по защите
the
прав
Commissioner for the
предпринимателей
Protection
города
of Entrepreneurs'
Москвы
Rights in
Татьяна
Moscow,
Вадимовна
Tatiana
Минеева.
Mineva.
Уполномоченные по защите прав
The Commissioner
предпринимателей
for
в
the Protection
Республике
of
Башкортостан
Entrepreneurs' Rights
Флюр
in the Republic of
Минзагитович
Bashkortostan,
Асадуллин.
Fleur Asadulin.
Председатель Совета
The Chairman
Башкирского
of the
регионального
Bashkir Regional
отделения
Office
«Опора
of
России»
Opora
Лейсан
Russia,
Рафисовна
Leysan
Николаева.
Nikolaeva.
Председатель
The
Башкортостанского
Chairman of the
регионального
Bashkir
отделения
Regional
ООО
Office of the
«Деловая
Business
Россия»
Association
Айдар
Business Russia,
Сабирович Зубаиров.
Aidar Zubairov.
Исполнительный директор
Managing
Ассоциации
Director of the
организаций
Association of Business
предпринимательства
Organizations
Республики
of the Republic of
Башкортостан
Bashkortostan, Irina Abramova.
Также по
And
видеоконференции к нам
also,
подключены
we will have the video
заместитель
conference,
председателя
including
комитета по
Managing
экономической
Director of the
политике,
Association of Business
промышленности,
Organizations of the
инновационному
Republic of
развитию и
Bashkortostan,
предпринимательству Государственной Думы Российской Федерации Денис Борисович
and
Кравченко.
Deputy Chairman of the Committee of Economic Policy, Denis Kravchenko.
Первый заместитель уполномоченного при президенте Республики Узбекистан по защите прав и
First
законных
Vice Deputy
интересов
on Protection
субъектов
of the Rights
предпринимательства Урунов
of
Жамшид Алимович.
Entrepreneurship, Jamshid Urunov.
Модератор пленарного
The moderator
заседания,
of the plenary
заместитель
session,
генерального директора
the
информационное
Vice Managing
агентство
Director
«Россия
of
ТАСС» Андрей
Citizens
Геннадьевич
Information
Соколов.
Section, Andrei Sokolov.
Добрый день, дорогие друзья,
Good
уважаемые
afternoon, dear
участники
colleagues, dear
форума.
participants of the forum.
Всех сердечно рад приветствовать.
I'm happy to
Еще
welcome you.
маленькое организационное уточнение. К нам мы очень
at
рассчитываем,
the detail we
на то, что к нам
hope
сегодня подключится и уполномоченный
We will listen to the Commissioner for the President of Uzbekistan
предпринимателей
on the
Максим
rights of the entrepreneurs.
Поэтому рассчитываем также на его участие.
We hope that he'll also join us.
Тема контрольно-надзорной деятельности
The subject is dedicated to control and supervision of business
власти в части
and interaction of business and government
нормативных требований.
while complying with the normative law, and we're discussing it for a long time. And we have a record of achievements
Очевидного конфликта интересов
and regulating the interest conflict.
они есть.
It does take place. It is noticeable.
Раз тема продолжает обсуждаться,
Still, since we keep discussing this subject, there are many items to improve
об этом
and to advance.
говорим на нашем
And we will deal with this topic during our plenary session. The Republic of Bashkortostan has reached success
налаживании
while streamlining communication between business and government in the area of supervision, regulatory activity, and business verification. I hope that our today's experience will be fruitful for officers and entrepreneurs of the Republic and officers and entrepreneurs of Russia
также другим странам
and other countries
вместе с нами идут этим
which are paving the same thorny road.
не секрет, что
It is no secret that
наложило определенный
the pandemic has impacted our actions, the actions of the regulatory authorities, and the formats of interaction of business and the governments.
какие уроки из этого
Which lessons have we managed to learn from this situation?
предстоит улучшить
What should we improve
поддержки бизнеса.
while sustaining our business? We will touch upon these topics.
Дискуссию.
Let us start our discussion.
Итак, первое слово я
Firstly, the floor goes to,
Флюру Минзагитовичу. Флюр
Флюр.
Минзагитович, скажите, пожалуйста,
please,
я
tell
бы
us.
сказал, поделитесь опытом,
Could you please share your experience
выстроена
about
работа по защите прав
the protection of the entrepreneurs' rights? Good afternoon, dear colleagues.
Если говорить о том, как у нас выстроена работа,
As for our work, let me accentuate that the Institute of the Commissioners in the Russian Federation and in the region, in the Republic of Bashkortostan, was first adopted. The first commissioner appeared for the first time. We are operating with the law, and there are similar organizations in other territories.
явились некими пионерами
We are pioneering in these affairs. It is hard to assess the work of entrepreneurs. Since I generated, I would like to support the entrepreneurs. I often hear negative responses that, and also positive ones regarding our work. Still, it is hard to estimate ourselves. I'd better expect the assessment of the entrepreneurs and the protection of their rights and these institutions. This work is systemic. We are conducting it for the first time, and our regulatory authorities are contributing to it, including the prosecutor's office. Here we appreciate the contribution of our best colleagues. Our business unit is also work, as well as the Republican, governmental bodies and offices and ministries. And also the Commissioner for the Entrepreneurs' Rights Protection. Still, let me focus on my own performance. Our event is named Control over Control, Partnership and Trust. I approve of this name. Still, I am dissatisfied with the fact that we deal with those who engender control, but we cannot ask them questions face to face. We cannot understand what they would like to obtain from the business. We would be happy to communicate with them, although we are always in touch with them. And we clarify these issues. Neither the Republic of Bashkortostan nor the Russian Federation has an office, the main idea of which is pressure and control. There are some governmental bodies who complete their mission. Some of their employees tend to be overwhelming. There is some legislation which is not for the good. As for the nuances of the new structure, let me highlight that I'm against inventing new structures, and my attitude to them is not special. Still, we have the prosecutor's office. They are our colleagues, which carry out supervision, and they contribute to our activity. That is why we do not have to create new institutions. While we are working, we are to create reforms. Still, in a while, we will restructure our work, we will review it. It is a complex process, and we may touch upon it right now. Let me also mention verification and control. There are some particular cases. For example, we are working with our supervision authorities. We want to draft this special approach, which is customized, and to mitigate the number of fees. And our representatives of the regulatory authorities come to the entrepreneurs and warn them. They put the information into the special documents, and then the prosecutor's office checks them, it verifies them, and they get lots of warnings. It means that they are red tape oriented, and the fees are imposed on them. Then our regulatory authorities go to streets, and lots of fines emerge. There are some exaggerated issues. I have already voiced my opinion. I'm really thankful for this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fleur. I think that our today's participant representing public organizations, they will give their appraisal to your activity as you yourself wished. But on the other hand, I'm satisfied that to hear that there are officers of supervisory bodies who sympathize with the entrepreneurs and businessmen and who are not abusing their office. So if there are more of those, I think there will be more human approach in our relations. And let's continue our discussion. I would like to give the floor to Tatiana. How does it work in Moscow, in the capital of Russia? Thank you very much for this opportunity. Well, speaking about Moscow, there are much more businesses and more requests and more inquiries. And how do they, in terms of their life? Well, event and restaurant and catering, we have 40% of, we don't have a bankruptcy restriction. Up to 20 or 30% in those businesses we have in shadow. And some of the are not quite adequate in terms of the development of economy, but let's be positive. I fully support my colleague here, a regional ombudsman, as we call him. Well, how should the work be organized? First of all, before the pandemic, we already launched the infrastructure for the protection of business in Moscow, which hasn't been there before. Right now, we have 10 working institutions, and the services which we have introduced before the pandemic, they were not demanded, but now they have a huge demand. For example, the mediation center, we have a whole chamber of business mediators. During the pandemic, we were requesting all the businessmen to resort, just to go to trying to come to terms with each other, not going straight to court, trying to agree on the matters about some kind of discounted lease rates between the lessors and the lenders. And we were requesting the mediators to work with such complicated requests as when a businessman cannot pay the sum of the contract. We also have a center for legislation initiatives. Borislav Gib, who was lately won here a competition of the best legal advisor. Actually, they are those who are involved in those legislative initiatives, which are also done by a regional ombudsman, and each head of the region, whether that a mayor, also Mr. Sabyanin joins in. Well, in general, assessing the work of business during the pandemic, I would like to say that the main trend is on cooperation and uniting. It has never been before in Russia or even in the world. There has been no such well-knit businesses in Moscow, for example, such sectors which were not in the big four of the trade chamber or who were not members of industrial associations. Nobody ever had united these small businesses. I can mention beauty industry. We have about 12 businesses there with several 100,000 of employees. I think it's a very important sector of economy, both for the males and for the females. It wasn't actually in the first package of support by the mayor of Moscow. Something had to be done, and we wrote about 200 or 300 barber shops resorted to us requesting for help. In 2 days, 300 persons united. Now we have about 5,000 legal persons who have united their businesses in collaborations, and we have some industry associations, except for Business Russia, Trade and Industry Chamber, and a number of other unions, and we are actually controlling the situation. We are having our hand on the pulse, and actually within 24 hours you cannot have the consolidated opinion of the majority. That is not possible. What else has happened? So we have all those sectors of economy united, but many, on the other hand, went into the shadow. They are understanding that businesses go bankrupt. They decided to work in co-working mode or home-based mode. And we have what we see now is a lot of shadow business. But At the same time, other businesses are talking about openness. And going back to beauty industry, speaking about transparency, now they offer to introduce kind of a beauty ID, a passport of a professional, a passport and a certificate of a professional service provider. When the market players themselves, they want to be transparent and to pay all the taxes and to officially employ people, because they were coming up with the requests from the government because people were not receiving compensations when pandemic came because they were not officially employed. And these are the new trends we have right now. Of course, business has become more accessible for control. I would like to give you numbers. The inspection plan included 200 business inspections and checks, and it actually went down for 40%. But what happens is what entrepreneurs talk about. Since there are less inspections and there are less controlling bodies, so each controller has more time to kind of a sleeping control norms, which the supervisors and the controllers were not using before. Now control is full size, and actually it has become more comprehensive. The so-called sleeping standard control, and actually the inspections are becoming more complex, more complicated. And of course, restriction, a moratorium for this kind of thing is important, because in terms of the infrastructure of business protection, we have implemented that, and we would like to see the organ through. We're actively using IT technologies, and the main control authority of Moscow, who are participating with. We have an IT platform, and it is called Open Control, and now it is being developed. We are now requesting an approval to hold a pilot trial. It will be kind of a system of single window, and these are the main requirements. You can make an application. We also make preventive audit instead of some kind of checks and inspections. And it will not be based on a single institution, but on a combination of various inspections. And a lot of attention is paid to prevention. In the beginning of 2020, we already tested the prototype on certain businesses, and the business society was telling us where to go, how to streamline, what it should look like, and in what way they are ready for prevention audit, some prevention measures instead of punishments. Why Moscow? Because service models have already been well tested. They are already well streamlined. During the pandemic, we launched Help Moscow Economy. It's a support measure where for each businessman, we were selecting measures which are targeted to a certain businessman, because very often they are not aware of that. And also small businesses of Moscow, the measures of support are chosen based on the individual taxpayer's number. So it's a targeted, customized approach, dedicated approach. When you choose the measures of support for a certain type of industry, in general, what is important is win-win relations between the government and business, and also control and supervisory bodies. As a conclusion, I would like to say I've been working with the interaction between businesses and power for 10 years, and having read the book dedicated to this, and actually many of the officers are already implemented that. They use Zoom to participate in the special meetings, because I think we came to some kind of point break when there should be absolutely new approach to the relations between business and power. Otherwise, we won't have any taxes, we won't have any workplaces. I think this dialogue should be used so that everything new that all the entrepreneurs are offering, so we want business to hear what is happening. And I invite the Business Society of Bashkortostan to use actively those tools and to interact in much detail with each of the department, with each branch of power, because it's the right time for the business to hear people. Thank you very much, Tatiana. I think it's a very interesting experience you shared. Our forum has hybrid format. We have online participants, we also have offline participants, and offline is so dynamic that we have Elena Sidorenko, the CEO of the platform for business applications, which is called Za Business, for business, literally. I think we will see Elena right now on the screen. Well, at least we can hear you. Irina, could you please tell us about your platform, how it works, about those requests and inquiries that you receive, and what you've mentioned, what you can point out during the pandemic in terms of inquiries of the entrepreneurs?
Thank you for giving me the floor. As far as I can see, I cannot see myself, but hopefully we can see you, Denise, and I'm very happy. I'm delighted to welcome you all, dear colleagues. In fact, the situation was pretty interesting. The platform was launched a year ago, and in March, we were all susceptible to the consequences of the pandemic, and we are still susceptible to them. But what should we tell? Has the situation in terms of pressing the business changed? Which peculiarities do they have in place? Let me underline that we see the prevention of forcing the business, and there are some organizations which are involved in this process. It was our agenda, which was delineated by the president of the RF. On the other hand, this information will be even more interesting for our esteemed entrepreneurs. We noticed a few peculiarities. Let me draw your attention to the fact that the number of requests and applications of the entrepreneurs hasn't changed drastically due to the COVID situation. On average, we get the same number of appeals per day, and we also process them. Neither has the general structure of these applications changed. Most of them touch upon the executive power and the crime. Lots of the applications referred to the General Prosecutor's Office are based on this topic, and let me highlight that there are no similar applications on the platform. I do not tend to underscore that. Sorry, could we please switch off the presentation? Unfortunately, we're short of time. But let me focus on the fact that we should act in this direction. This question arose when we have these planned verifications and inspections. Should understand that the whole place is never empty, and this verification was overwhelming. They were overwhelming, and all of the applications are related to inspections. When we modify the situation, let me sincerely answer the question whether we modify the situation in a qualitative way or we create tools which look like changes of the situation. Nowadays, the prosecutor's office, the General Prosecutor's Office and the local ones. Let me express my gratitude to the Prosecutor's Office of Bashkortostan. We are currently interacting with you. We participate in different events dedicated to entrepreneurs and identify a backlog of problems. Still, we haven't drafted the algorithms which will allow us to solve these problems. I was asked by the organizers in terms of control over control. Do we actually need it, or we need the self-organized autonomous system of the Russian business? We all remember this situation, which has convinced us that the regulatory actions and the norms which existed in the Soviet period were just making the business space slower. It was the regulatory guillotine. This problem is really substantive. When we remove the extra constructions, we shouldn't touch upon the core structure on which the regulatory activity is based, and it is our key mission. We admit the self-organization of the business within the safety limits which are designed at the business. Such platforms as For Business and some other tools which were mentioned today will allow us to streamline the system of correct sample regulation. And there is also the tool of feedback. Currently, feedback is of prime importance for us. We can see it in the platform. When the entrepreneurs who send the applications can respond to these applications, they may complain of them or leave the feedback. And we generalize the feedback and refer them to the Observation Council. As for other systematic problems, let me accentuate some other issues. Which problems do we have in place? There are fewer inspections. Still, there is another problem which has emerged in the regions, and Bashkortostan is no exception. It is forcing business, which is exercised by the taxation bodies. There is some kinds of taxation, such as VAT assessment and assessment of other taxes. And it is kind of crime, despite the fact, Article 99, despite the fact that we support some of the entrepreneurs, it is one of the key problems which we have to discuss. In this regard, I am delighted to highlight that the head of our government has signed the directorate, and the Observation Council of our Republic is part of the governmental bodies, and the number of our founders has increased. In terms of business protection, another problem is intended ignoring of the solutions which have already taken place. I mean, arbitration courts, and not only in terms of taxation, but also compensation of debts. There is mutual consideration of organizations, and some of them are real offenses. They are criminal cases. And some actions are not qualified as actions which are completed by the entrepreneurs in terms of law enforcing agencies. They cannot use the preventive measures such as apprehension. Thus, this situation is overwhelming and it is scary. We have some other scary trends, such as red tape. The president has already mentioned it. Some criminal cases have been existing for years. Not only do they exist because the hard cases are at the platform, some of them last for 8 to 9 years. And they will soon come to an end. There are some other substantive problems related to the terms and the procedure terms. And the pandemic has negatively affected the situation. There is a backlog of problems right now. How can we settle them? Let me finalize my presentation. In my view, our core mission is
Здесь нельзя быть собственником и узурпировать, скажем,
the fact that we cannot usurp the opportunities of any platform. We should do our utmost in order to
и объяснить,
explain to the business and to the authorities
не просто
which problems the business is facing. We should not only interpret them. We also necessitate an accurate and explicit algorithm of the solutions. We have already discussed the fact that we haven't prepared the taxation algorithm, neither the we have also prepared the criminal jurisdiction
к нашей работе.
algorithm. Please join our work and promote your own issues. And we are also ready to help you in terms of organization and technological potential while promoting our cooperation. Thank you very much. Thank you, Elena.
Просил бы, если у вас есть возможность,
If you have a chance to stay here without disconnecting, please stay here. We will unleash another discussion in the end, and you may participate in it. And now the floor goes to Rinat.
деловая Россия, ну, уже
Business Russia has already been mentioned. It has already been recognized by the unity of the entrepreneurs.
отмечаете, как вы видите, степень эффективности
What is the extent of cooperation of different businesses and the government in terms of supervision and control?
в недрах вашей организации созрели какие-то идеи?
Maybe you have some mature ideas within your organization. Well, the floor is yours. Good afternoon. I'm happy to welcome our guests here. First of all, Tatiana, who is a frequent guest to Bashkortostan, visitor to Bashkortostan, and our online speakers who are also participating in our discussion. Let me briefly answer the question of the panel of our discussion.
Я все-таки считаю, что
In my view, creating the new structure of control
не инновационный способ
is not viable.
времена цифровизации
We live in the digitalization era.
настроил бы работу
I had better
с общественными объединениями,
streamline the work with the public unity,
в части
and also any offenses must be punished in terms of legal prosecution of entrepreneurship.
работа, которая ведется
And the active work completed by the commissioner is sufficient. We are currently moving in this direction.
Казахстана, как построена работа, какие обращения,
When it comes to Bashkortostan and applications in this regard,
львиная часть обращений
vast majority of the applications are referred to the commissioner,
работают именно с силовыми структурами,
and we are also working with enforcing structures.
что идет
Most of the applications are related to the business.
разделить по общему количеству, то в первую очередь
The overall number of the applications is connected with leasing of the property, the premises.
объявленный локдаун,
The lockdown was announced when the big box stores were closed, and also the barber shops and beauty salons were closed. They didn't have a chance to accommodate the customers.
к собственникам торгового центра,
They addressed the owners of the big box stores, and they answered that they also had leased premises.
имущественному, и по цепочке идет обращение.
There was a network of applications. The first package of measures was federal, and it was adopted at the municipal level and at the republican level.
Спасти многие бизнесы,
It allowed us to rescue lots of businesses.
а сроки окончания это все-таки нагрузка на бюджет.
Still, it was the charge for the budget, and this chain of relations between us and entrepreneurs is currently discussed at our platform in Bashkortostan.
Кстати, упоминание тематика, это, конечно,
The second
потому что
topic which is in demand is relations with banks.
те меры, которые банки предпринимают,
The actions taken by banks in terms of loans are particular. Still, the government is involved in this area. There are some loans for business preservation, which allows us to support the entrepreneurs when we process the applications. Thirdly, we accentuate the number of applications associated with prolonging different documents. They are implemented at the federal level. Due to some coronavirus restrictions, lots of officers and state structures couldn't work this way. They are working distantly, remotely.
Well, many work in remote mode nowadays, and the deadline for reviewing an application have been extended. As for business platform, business framework, Business Russia, we call it, we at the roundtable already discussed at the Center for Legal Support of Business Russia, together with the Agency for the Insurance of Deposits. They have created a operational body because business is alive, business continues working, and they go to banks for loans. There are cases when entrepreneurs, having taken a loan, the bank loses a license, and a lot of problems occur with that. There is a problem with redeeming of loans. So accounts, I'm for digitalization, for transparency of relations between the control bodies and businesses. And I think that is the right way. Well, since you are present here, which means that this is working. Thank you very much, and I would give the floor to Irina Abramova. We have already talked a lot. We have discussed the subject of relations between the control bodies, even the law enforcement bodies, and business. So I would like to go ahead and ask you about social public control. How efficient and whether it's really needed or not, could public control reasonably, soberly add up to the administrative control? Could it decrease the degree of tension between business and power? Thank you very much. Greetings to all the forum participants. I represent the oldest social organization, regional public organization, which was established in 2000. And I am talking about that only because we saw evolution of relations between businesses and power. And it has undergone huge changes. It's an objective assessment. Lately, Vladislav Grip already visited us for the second time, who is the author of the law on the fundamentals of public control, the Society of Entrepreneurs, which unites into public organizations. We also represent civil society, and our protection of our interests is always within the framework of the federal law on the fundamentals of public control. Inspections, expertise, discussions, public hearings. There are lots of forms of public control. For example, our public organization is a member of 34 public councils of absolutely different bodies of power. And these are the points where we can negotiate, we can come to agreements, where we can find systematic solutions. And I would like to share with you just two late cases, which, in my opinion, with the help of dialogue, we managed to overcome, solve a problem in our republic. We have been talking long that it's hard for us, it's crisis, and the further we go, it's becoming more and more complex. But there is an opportunity for complex solutions, in my opinion. When the trash reform began to be implemented, we understand all of this. Because of some imperfection, the entrepreneurs, they had huge complexities. the taxes increased because the norms of litter and garbage were increased. A huge work was done on the interaction platform between the government of Bashkortostan, the Ministry of Ecology and Nature Preservation. And as you understand, the subject has become less acute and the problem is more or less solved. And the second case, when pandemic came to be, and we were working on the platform of anti-crisis headquarters, when we were reporting to the government that there is a catastrophe occurring for small business, and we could see how the government heard us. We are proud that Bashkortostan has taken one of the largest package of anti-crisis measures for the support of the economy. We are proud that our government, additionally to those the indexes, we have taken 33 the organizations which were identified as those who were damaged by the we have taken the so-called OKVED, the Russian national classifier of types of economic activity. These indexes were used to provide support to the businesses. And the Republic allocated 330 million rubles to support our regional entrepreneurs with subsidies. And this, in my opinion, are the marvelous cases which prove that we hear each other, that we are heard, and our organization right now prepared an address to Andrei Nazarov about the third package of measures, and we can't wait to get feedback, but we feel that there is motion, there is work going on, and we are heard. Thank you, Irina. Indeed, our forum is here, was organized to have a dialogue, a partnership dialogue between the power and business. And it's amazing that those tools of public control, they help us to analyze the cases, not formally from the bureaucratic, but with thorough understanding of the situation from both parties. And I think business will try to think more, trying to put themselves into the shoes of the government, why certain measures are done in this way, not another, and there should be some kind of a compromise, not motion just in one direction. And I would like to give the floor to Denis Kravchenko. Denis, will you please tell us, looking from the federal level, how do you see the situation? What are the trends in the development, in the perfecting of the supervisory and control activity? Because as you have already heard today, all the speakers, they mentioned that forceful impulse is maybe it's the force impact is not relieved, but it's transferred in a certain way. Are there any kind of legislative initiatives? Would you please briefly tell us about it? Good day, Andrei. Good day, dear colleagues. It's a pleasure to meet you from Okhotny Ryad, from the State Duma. Unfortunately, I couldn't fly to sunny and frosty Ufa today, but we are constantly on the call with Radi Khabirov, the head of the Republic, and I know that it's frosty and nice weather in Bashkortostan, but that doesn't influence the positive climate in the business environment. And I was listening carefully to all the previous speakers. I would like to say that Fleur has said that I'm not here to judge the environment and the situation with business support. And I think, in my opinion, I think the Republic deserves very high appraisal, and the government and the head are paying much attention to the problem. And I'm very happy that we have the representatives of leading business associations, including Irina, who has said that it's the oldest organization in the Republic. It is amazing. It is marvelous. Well, also, I would like to greet our colleagues from Moscow, Tatiana Mineeva, and everyone who, and Elena, everyone who is participating as guests. I hope I will have a chance to visit Ufa soon. A similar convention like today's. I would like to say that, as all of us know, business, small and mid-scale business, is the employer of a quarter of the working population of the country. More than 19 million people work in small and mid-scale business in the country, and also 21% of GDP is made up by the taxes received from small and mid-scale business. We understand that the businesses should be growing. In some of the countries, this figure is equal to 50 or even 60%. We're actually trying to attain that by fulfilling the directives of the president. Also, in my speech, I would like to touch upon a number of subjects related to some laws related to business which we have adopted. Among them, just lately, we approved in all the hearings, it's already signed by the regulatory sandbox, so to say, about some experimental forms of business, pilot business. This decision was waited for quite a long time, was anticipated by our R&D sector, those who are involved in innovation. Just last year also, we have adopted a law on the territorial distribution of Skolkovo Center. It's our Silicon Valley. We have relieved innovation business the necessity to leave Bashkortostan, for example. You can have discounts without even having to travel to Moscow. You can stay in your region. No need to come to Moscow. I think the regions have potential and initiatives to establish their own discounted modes, which we, as the representatives of legislative authority, do. We have lifted the 4 NDFL declaration, which is a tax declaration. We have taken large measures related to the support of businesses in Arctic area. We continue to streamline the government supporting investment climate and in the Far East, and we apply extraterritorial approach, which helps the whole agglomerations, the groups of regions, to support business. And here, the locomotive of growth, which is a project of the United Russia, and I'm the coordinator of it. This project is exactly aimed at building the relations between the real economy, and we, together with all the business associations of the country, with the Chamber of Trade and Commerce and Industry, Opora России, and other countries, we interact consecutively to work on the legislative initiatives supporting business. Going back to your question, Oleg, I would like to enumerate a number of legislative initiatives which need additional regulation, which we have on the table, which I have and my colleagues have on the table to be signed, which we see as a priority to be adopted in the nearest future. Among them, first of all, we want to have a simplified form for the self-employed to legalize their activity, just to, if we have some claims from the clients, through the use of simplified data, which will lift the load from the regulatory and control bodies, introduce restrictions to adapt some laws and norms, establishing new duties and restrictions without preliminary assessment of the effectiveness and possible costs and expenses, which will again relieve the regulatory load on the small companies. And also expanding access of business owners to discounted financing. Here we mean issuing loans, giving loans with a discounted rate, which may increase the interest of potential entrepreneurs and will facilitate their business, especially in the situation of increased turbulence like we have now. And I would like to say that we, together with business society, with Elena and other colleagues, we came up with a number of proposals, and we have managed to make them real. They were adopted. Unfortunately, not everything we were planning came to life, but we're continuing this work. And as a conclusion, I would like to say one more initiative which we're working on right now. It is related to revisiting criminal responsibility under the legislation related to business activity. It has been discussed for quite a long while, and we are working to push it through to make it become a law. Also, in State Duma, we're following the latest tendencies, and we are working on the mechanism of issuing grants to support business incubators, guarantee funds, and other measures of support of SME. As for large business, we lately, together with the government, we adopted a new law on the special investment contract, especially for the defense industry. And today I'm going to speak on behalf of our faction in the third hearing about the law which is there to facilitate the procurement activities for the entrepreneurs who represent SME companies. So we are continuing to increase opportunities for our entrepreneurs, and we are continuing to support them in these difficult times. Unfortunately, I will not be able to be until the end of the session here because my colleagues are saying that we are going to review the law which I am participating in. Thank you very much for your invitation, and I would like to congratulate our colleagues from Bashkortostan. Today, the First Lady of Bashkortostan has a holiday. She's having a birthday. We know her very well, we love her, and we would like to congratulate her on her birthday. Thank you very much, Denis. First of all, we wish you all the success in promoting all those legislative initiatives. I think it's important that the majority of them are aimed not at just streamlining or perfecting the forms of control, but to ensure access, first of all, to SME companies, to certain governmental procuring platforms, bidding platforms, which will help the businesses expand and scale up their profit. Actually, it will make them go out of the shadow and legalize their activity. Absolutely right. I will just briefly add, if we go back to the subject of control over control, we, as the legislative body and representative of the largest political powers of the country, we are following closely the business society. And here, it's a pleasure for me to cooperate with the Ombudsman and Tatiana. We are always on the call, we are always in touch, and it's a special pleasure because we are sharing the same vision. Same for Elena, who actively gets us involved in the operation, in the work of her platform. Me and my colleagues, we react very often with our deputies' request, senators' request, and we are putting on control those inquiries which are related to some kind of abuse by the powers of the situation and abuse of office. Thank you very much. Thank you again. I would like to give the floor to Leisan. Please tell us, it's quite, we understand that all kinds of businesses, they undergo inspections, but for large business, I think it's a bit easier for them because they can afford having a whole staff of legal advisors, all kinds of experts on interaction with the governmental bodies who understand how the system works. And accordingly, the majority of problems, they are resolving formally or in an informal way. Actually, we have to be frank here. So what does How does it work for small businesses and private entrepreneurs, small companies who cannot afford having such an expensive experts on their payroll? How do they address those kind of challenges? And is there a solution in terms of conventions initiated from underneath, which Tatiana has told us, or maybe in other regions something of the kind exists? You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon to all of the participants of the forum. Not only is our event broadcasted in Bashkortostan, but it is also looked at far beyond the Russian Federation. Our today's event shows that I do not have a long-term story of socially oriented society. Still, we are concentrated on business and the presence of the officers, which takes place online and online. In the past, we used to discuss business and entrepreneurship. And let me express my gratitude to Andrei Nazarov that we can discuss both subjects. We are responsible for our business units and business communities and of our republic. We may now deliver the examples. Tatiana has already covered certain points which are present in our republic. These opportunities allow the social organizations to develop. As for the structure, some of us have already mentioned that there is no point in creating new structures for control. Still, these bodies, these authorities allow us to sustain the situation, and they are estimating vehicles for controlling the patterns. Let me provide a few examples of the regulatory authorities. Some of them are operating as advisors, such as the authorities who are involved in the single day of reporting. It is the initiative of public organizations. We have convened the representatives of supervision structures, supervision bodies. It is not the only event where we are currently involved, because each region has been conducting the investment activity, and the entrepreneurs and the small business are addressing these persons. They check their business, they are aware of the fact which fines are in store for them and which violations they inflict and how they have to overcome them. At the same time, we have special conditions for this approach, for this regulatory approach, which is a rescue link in our chain. Each entrepreneur is aware of his or her nuances. Each of them has nuances and details. No entrepreneur works perfectly in an ideal fashion. When they go to inspections, they can impose a fine on any business for certain points. The entrepreneur will be used to advising the authorities in which they have violations, and they will also adjust them and remove them in order to avoid inspections. And there are also some unexpected inspections which are aimed at the life of our families and our children. Thus, the extraordinary inspections are inevitable. I wouldn't like to remember the case with Kromai Loshit restaurant. Still, we should mention it. The entrepreneurs cannot exist without any inspections. I mean, restaurants, catering, children, entertainment, it is our safety and our responsibility. Public communities jointly with the other authorities may control the system and assess
что и ведется очень,
the situation with the regulatory authorities.
где часто раз в квартал обсуждаем, где проверок.
We discuss the inspections and the feedback in the Republic on a quarterly basis.
И когда надзорным органам задают, почему
When the supervisory authorities are asked why they have such a lot of inspections, they answer that there are some cons, there are not only pros of the situation. I'm not aware of the situation about federal authorities. Still, this does take place in our republic. Some of the commissions are not agreed upon. When you didn't have enough time to
вынуждены платить штраф, вот это, да.
streamline the situation with snow, when the streets are not that clear, when it does not look good, we need these inspections. As for the statistics, I do not remember it. Maybe we will now voice it. Not all the inspections are agreed upon at once, in no time. Only 2/3 of them react to them, and verifications take place, inspections take place.
Душат, и бизнес из-за этого.
Some of them strangle the businesses, but still, we have now reached the regional stage of the National Business Success Award, and we have already listened to our entrepreneurs. Our leader, Daria, has already come.
Такие проекты, такие обороты.
We have such projects and such colossal turnover, and some of the new directions were launched.
Я была с гордостью, даже шокирована.
I was appalled when I was listening to all these entrepreneurs
Предприниматель на то им предприниматель,
because they are truly skilled.
предпринимать.
They are always undertaking something.
Но
I realized that the crisis provides us with new opportunities.
про госпрограмму, вот
Let me also emphasize the state program.
второй, скоро, надеюсь, сегодня-завтра услышим, и третий пакет мер.
There are 3 packages of measures and actions aimed at entrepreneurs.
Многие не получили, потом нам жалобу писали.
Many of you haven't received them, and then we got a complaint in this regard. Why haven't you actually received them?
Что мы не знали.
Half of them were not aware of the case. The others did not believe us.
Когда на зарплату
There was a 2% interest,
сотрудников
and it meant that
тогда, когда
it meant that you didn't make the employees redundant, and it was a problem.
к сожалению, все, программа закончилась.
Still, the program
Я бы
was finished.
предложение
I would like to launch the second proposal, the second resolution,
каждый предприниматель был в общественной организации.
which will imply the participation of all entrepreneurs in public communities.
Вот вы там-то и получаете информацию.
You get information in these various sites. It is the method of your protection and your defense, your support.
У муниципалитетов есть союзы, где
There are some unions for municipalities where you can get the necessary information, the target information. We have different businesses such as polyvinyl chloride businesses or optic fabrics, which were developed by entrepreneurs who have potential for development in our region.
в предпринимательском сообществе.
And you're part of the entrepreneurs community.
В завершение я хочу
In conclusion, let me boast of the fact that some of our regions know that Bashkortostan is distinctive of the fair attitude to the business.
самые сильные лидеры
We have the most powerful leaders of all the public communities of the Russian Federation.
ниже тройки, четвертого места у нас
We take the 3rd and the 4th places.
мы очень живем,
And the head of the
наверное, каждый знает
unity of the industrialists has already mentioned that we are all aware of our domains, of our audience, our target audience.
секрет успеха, наверное, в том, что
Our key to success is
и
the
часто
fact that we have potential for development.
как так деловая, а как там вы опора, вот это
Yes.
должно быть, мы как общественная организация
We are the public community,
подавать
and everyone is aware of
как можно правильно,
business Apora.
только правильная, нормальная, настоящая конкурентная среда,
We have the favorable competitive environment which provides us with potential for development, and it is our public organization. Please let us do everything jointly. thanks to concerted efforts. And entrepreneurs and investors should support one another, and we can understand what happens in the area of Bashkir business. Thank you, the organizers of the event. Thank you, Lisan. It was a very contentful presentation, and we can now hear the response of the colleagues out of the entrepreneurs community. Our colleagues have responded to your thesis on isolation. This allows them to stay tuned up, not to put on weight. They are intellectually fit. On the other hand, I believe that it is of prime importance that the inspectors have a certain attitude when they verify and inspect the entrepreneurs. They're aimed at identifying any gaps, any shortcomings, or they make a mouse out of a molehill, or they are just in favor of public safety and security. They also regulated the competitive environment, and our competition has to be fair, and we ought not to steer clear of the norms and the legislative documents. And I also recalled Zimная Vishnya, and there is a backlog of certain cases. Well, we will reiterate this issue, and now we'll listen to Mr. Kasimov. Dilmurod is the commissioner of the President of the Republic of Uzbekistan on entrepreneurs' rights and legal interests. Dilmurod, you haven't been with us from the very beginning, still you managed to listen to our problems. Do the problems which we are currently discussing have something in common? Could you please share with us which interesting ideas and expertise you have in place? We may also implement them at the regional level and at the level of the Russian Federation. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, dear colleagues, dear partners. I'm delighted to greet you at our today's forum. Let me thank the organizers, the government of the Republic of Bashkortostan, for having me. It is the second forum carried out in Ufa, where the Institute of Business of Uzbekistan is involved. It is an excellent platform for exchanging the best practices and discussing topical issues in the domain of entrepreneurship. Let me focus on our performance and share our experience on right protection in the area of property. We are creating favorable conditions for e-commerce. In compliance with the legal acts, we have the principle of protecting the entrepreneurs in all the levels of interaction with public bodies, with governmental bodies. There are some actors of entrepreneurship and private property, and it is banned to use the criminal law, and no one can be deprived of having the right to be an entrepreneur. Since 2016, our planned inspections of the entrepreneurs were completely lifted. And it is the positive nature in the area of entrepreneurs' life. It was a good example, and it will also be exemplary for other states. Thanks to our President's initiative, we established the institution of the Commissioner of the Republic of Bashkortostan, aimed at protecting the rights of entrepreneurs. This institution was established in order to provide for the warranties and legal protection of the entrepreneurs. Our commission is protecting the interests of the entrepreneurs which were violated due to the actions of legal bodies or the officers. For protecting them, business ombudsman has been empowered. For instance, we monitor the implementation of the legislation, and we also remove the gaps. We provide for the elimination of the consequences of the offenses, and some of the officers have violated the entrepreneurs' rules, and now these cases go to court. We also address the courts at the interest of our entrepreneurs who do not pay, and we do not pay the fees. And all the actors of entrepreneurship have access to justice. Over 18 months of this year, our organization handled over 5,000 written applications to the actors of entrepreneurship. 2,000 of them were resolved in a positive way. I mean, the rights of the entrepreneurs, more than 1,350 measures of legal enforcement were also considered. There was 792 officers who got the protocols of administrative offenses, and they were also referred to court. And in accordance with court filings, they bore the administrative responsibility, and these legal resolutions were lifted. They filed for them, and the number was $5 million. The power of the ombudsman also was expanded. There were some regional branches and regional offices which emerged for the first time. Last year, at the initiative of our distinguished president, we created regional offices which are currently operating the region, and they're aimed at protecting the entrepreneurs' rights. The business ombudsman has the right to complain of the legal acts of the civil court in the institutional order. The President of the Republic of Uzbekistan also mentioned that since of the 1st of April 2019, one of the key missions of the business ombudsman is coordinating and controlling the legitimacy of inspection of the entrepreneurs, the side of the controlling and supervision authorities. We're also accountable for legal support of entrepreneurs, and we inspect their performance. I mean, we inspect the entrepreneurs when they agree and when the business ombudsman approves them. The resolution of the business ombudsman in the area of inspection is mandatory for execution. The single system of electronic registration of inspections is also functioning successfully. All the inspections of the entrepreneur's activity are included there, and we monitor their legitimacy. When the business ombudsman identifies the legal inspections of the entrepreneurs, and when there are some violations in terms of officers and controlling authorities, we see the protocols on administrative offenses, and they are also referred to the court. Thanks to the protocols of the administrative offenses, 172 officers were involved, and they violated the order of the entrepreneurs. 98 people are now bearing the administrative responsibility. It is due to the court's decision. Thanks to the 241st article, there were some administrative offenses, and some of the revisions and inspections were also violated. And a fine is imposed on officers in some cases. It is one of the largest fines in the code, which testifies to the need in preventing the illegal activity of the entrepreneurs in our country. We also have to provide for their rights and legal interests. The illegal intervention must be curtailed. And since from January to October, the representatives and the supervision authorities were also conducting the inspection and the appraisal on being empowered to controlling the entrepreneurs. We identify how whether the employees of the controlling supervisory authorities are aware of these facts. How they can verify it? Whether they are aware of the fact, or whether whom they actually inspect. And our inspection and appraisal are based on this approach. Sometimes we do not allow the supervisors to inspect the entrepreneurs. Last year, the number of inspections declined by 30%. One of the pressing problems is launching import equipment by direction of our president. We got an additional mission. We helped our entrepreneurs in practical terms when they launched import equipment so that the entrepreneurs could import their equipment to Uzbekistan, to install it and to work properly. Thanks to our contribution, over 5,000 kinds of equipment were launched. And it also created over 30,000 new workplaces. There was also a problem of licensing. With the business ombudsman, the president has signed the charter in accordance with which 70 out of 266 kind of licensing activity and about documents and 140 documents were approved, and it will be simplified. Business ombudsman also got the extra right to ask for the postponement and deferral of the documents. And this, thanks to these measures, the entrepreneurs will get a rescue pool. They will have a chance to keep their activity despite their debts. They will not have to stop their banking operations, their banking transactions. It testifies to the fact that the government of Uzbekistan does its utmost in order to support the entrepreneurs and to create the appropriate conditions for business. Dear colleagues, and in conclusion, let me reiterate that we are exposed to cooperation. We are convinced that these open-hearted meetings and events will contribute to identifying and solving topical pressing issues of the business representatives at the SCO space, which will give an impetus to further expansion of trade and cooperation of organizations and businesses. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dilmurat. Actually, what you have said is very interesting. It goes without saying, because you followed the path of not only improving the experience of business, but also improving the quality of administration and the quality of work of legal officers on what they do. I think that's exactly the thing which we should pay attention to here in Russia and in the regions of Russia. And also, we should take up a similar practice and expand the list of norms, because the supervisors, the controllers should understand why they come to a certain business for a check, what they should reveal. We have just several minutes. I would like to ask all the speakers very briefly, in a few words, to speak up on the following subjects. In a number of presentations, we heard about trust between business and power. And I will even go even further of power in society as a whole. Laysan, she has given some interesting statistics that not all, but not everyone believed, or some did not believe, that businesses could get the measures of support. In your opinion, what should be done in order to win that trust and to strengthen it? Irina, if you can hear us, if you're still with us, I would like to give you the floor first. Thank you so much. Indeed, I'm here with you. In fact, in my presentation, I have already tried to cover it. The main task is to ensure feedback. When we see a situation when business requests something from power and power responds, and business will have a chance to assess the completeness of the answer, that is the credit of trust we are expecting. And any kind of digital platforms, they allow us to ensure this feedback by avoiding physical contact between power and business. It's a very important subject. I think we are on the right track. Yes, I completely support this thought, because the situation with coronavirus, actually, it's expedited, it accelerated many changes. And yes, the officers, public officers themselves, they began talking. Our colleagues have mentioned already this, communicating with control and supervisory bodies. And the situation itself also made it so that a lot of communication was switched to online mode. And I think it is the path which we should follow in future. Thank you. Laysan, what about you? I think that the first step was already made by making this kind of conventions and conferences at both all Russian and regional level. When we talk and when the interpreters see that, and when we see some positive statistics of communication, I think it's the right path to the relations of trust. And I would go ahead and ask entrepreneurs, you are those who make mentality. If you don't believe the young population, the young generation will have a similar, if I had grown on the movies of the 90s, when each first person is an interpreter, each second person is a bandit, is a criminal. If we had grown on this kind of story, they cannot just convert themselves. They cannot grow trust all of a sudden overnight, because it cannot be changed all of a sudden. It depends on all of us, each entrepreneur, each businessman. If you have a spirit of businessman, I think it's your duty to convey this positive attitude to the growing generation. And I think the most important thing is to apprehend the status An honored businessman should be similar to an honored officer, and they should be here with us. We should tell their success stories. Maybe pension fund. We are all about business. We can collect it somehow to have pension, to have some special increased pension for honored businessmen. I'm not saying that we should give budget money to the entrepreneurs, add something. No, I'm not saying that. I'm talking about status. We should give some special status. We should introduce the name of honored entrepreneur. I would like to join in with everyone who had spoken before. There is a trend for collaboration when in Moscow the economic began to collapse, and the representatives of power and business were in the same boat, and they began cooperating, negotiating. There were about 300 offers, and we saw that in the packages of measures of the mayor of Moscow, where we saw collective requests from business society. I support Lysian here. Not did the interpreters believe that they had a lack of trust. They were not trusting that you could get some money. And the role of business communities, not of the big four, which we have talked about a lot, but some industry associations, new conventions and business clubs. I think it is on such a high level now that the authorities are ready to talk to you and give you measures of support, because all of us are in the same boat. We should save the economy. So the question of trust is very crucial. Thank you. Fleur, you have the floor. I think I will make you upset. Many of you, I'm not for trust. Well, I'm not against trust. I'm for strict following of legislation. In our country, in Russian Federation, laws are close to ideal. What is lacking is the implementation of laws. When a person takes a law and goes to implement it. Trust is a moral category, ethical category, whether you have it or not. It's a question of a certain employee. If he works in a trustworthy manner, he's a good person. We don't have such a profession as a good person. We have a profession of an officer who should fulfill the law strictly, and if he or she does everything up to the mark, it will be good. We should demand from the legal officers, from the representative of governmental bodies, to fulfill their obligations within the framework of the law. In my opinion, the pandemic has become the catalyst when business began manifesting themselves, calling, looking for chats, looking for places where to get the information from. If previously everyone had a principle, it's all fine, but now when indeed there is a threat to business, the activity of business trying to convene, trying to cooperate, the number of messages in our chats increased exponentially. They were just breaking our phone lines, and the active position of business, they cannot be any good without evil. And if business is active, some systematic things will be changing in favor of business. So, thank you very much. Unfortunately, the time is running out, and we have to finish our today's discussion. I think it was very interesting, and what is most important, it was multilateral, and we went away from some formal manner, discussing how could we once again reform the supervisory bodies. And I think it's good because we exercised some informal approach. This is the subject we can discuss eternally. And with the new spin of the reforms, the pressure on business increases. But we have touched upon the aspects which are more fundamental, more substantial, how to make it so that control is not breaking, is not disadvantageous to the business, to accommodate, to address the needs of all the participants. We have discussed the absence of information, the lack of information, what the government does for business, and we have disclosed, revealed that the interpreters themselves can self-organize, they can make unities. And dear colleagues, I would like to wish all of you today, which is most important, I would like to wish you much health. Please take care of your relatives and your partners and your friends, and please actively participate in the talks between the power and business. Good luck to everyone. Thank you very much.